This is from the Jouse Inquiry. Barbara Mikulski is interviewing FBI agents hidden behind a partition. The Phoenix FBI agent hidden by the partition is Ken Williams. So let's see what they have to say.
Senator Mikulski.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First, to the men testifying and really to the men and women that you represent. Know that I believe, as this United States Senator, I have tremendous respect for you. And I have tremendous respect for what you do every day. You know, while the rest of us are eating Thanksgiving dinner or opening Christmas presents, you're out there in the field, and you've missed many a family event and all of the things that we know go into it. And I believe, from just the testimony that we've heard, that the agents in the field and the field offices were really doing their job. And to the Phoenix agent, your rebuke of Congress is well taken. I accept the validity of that rebuke. I'm not one of the ones who ragged on you or made you public or whatever. But I think that statement was well taken. And for this committee to have effective oversight and to expect the cooperation of the agencies, we need to make sure that we protect you while we're asking you to protect us.
Well, here's the problem, is that Phoenix field agency, the field office, actually weren't concerned with Arab fundamentalism, even though one of the very first Arab fundamentalist centers built in the United States was the Maktab al-Khidmat. Now, there was an actual office in Brooklyn, New York, but one of the very first centers was in Arizona. So Arizona basically was one of the very first cities in the United States to have this radical fundamentalist sect enter the United States. There's a long-standing history with Al-Qaeda and their connection to Arizona. Wadi al-Hajj, who was an Al-Qaeda financier, who was found guilty for his participation in the 1998 East Africa bombings, had lived in Texas and has a girlfriend there. And basically was part of a Al-Qaeda's group in the very early days. So it wasn't like Arizona's like some, city that didn't experience Arab fundamentalism until recently. No, they've had long experience regarding this problem. And for them not to give any type of validity to people like Ken Williams, who saw that there was a problem with Arab fundamentalist training at flight centers in Scottsdale, and this is coming from an informant, a valid informant, that basically was ignored. The information was ignored by the FBI because when the Phoenix memo, which is basically about an investigation into a radical fundamentalist called Zachariah Subra, when this was shared with the leading agencies in the United States, barely anyone read it.
So I think that statement of yours was very well presented. It was presented in an excellent, forthright way, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I want to go to really solutions. Much of our inquiry has been kind of looking back. I'd like to look ahead. And with three men who had incredible responsibility during this time and who I'm sure have agonized day after day, memo after memo, what could have been done differently, I'd like to ask you to share with the committee what you think would be the top three things you think the Congress should do or your agency should do to really improve our situation and to make sure this kind of gaps and so on would never happen again. And if you could just go down the line, because I was looking at the issue of a smoking gun. There isn't a smoking gun. Are there systemic issues? Yes. So if we look at the systemic issues, then what are the solutions?
Okay. Thank you, Senator. Speaking for Phoenix, The top three things that I would like to see, and number one, and I think it's the most imperative, is additional resources applied throughout the intelligence community with our analytical capability. There should be one place established where raw intelligence from the field, both from overseas and within the United States, from all the different intelligence agencies that are out there collecting, gets dumped and analyzed and looked at, and raw material put into a analytical product and gets disseminated to the officers in the field. The second thing is the need for more investigators here in the United States within the FBI. We talk about this in our squad areas every day. We cannot continue to do the number of things that we are charged with doing with the number of agents we have. 11,000 agents, when you think about it, for a country of close to 300 million is amazing. When you look at cities like New York, who have 35,000 plus police officers trying to protect their citizens, certainly I think we need more agents to do the job. And third is we need to increase our technical capabilities, our information flow. I mean, in direct reference to my memorandum, we should have a capability to wash and then rewash visa applicants through the U.S. intelligence community databases to see if anybody that's applying for visas to come into this country are known to the U.S. intelligence community as being involved with terrorist organizations. And not to mention, as we've heard time and again today, better information technology for us in the FBI so we can communicate with each other more effectively.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I also would agree with Ken Williams there, but I think there's a problem with field officers in the FBI and their superiors. And pre 9/11, you know, that was a huge case. And for example, Minnesota, the subject of Zacharias Moussaoui, you had field agents like Harry Samit basically conducting an investigation into a guy who has a prior history with being involved with French and German radical fundamentalist sects that came inside the United States. And then when they met him and his associate Hussein al-Adas in a hotel room, they basically saw that these guys were up to no good. And so they filed a FISA warrant, which is a foreign intelligence warrant to look through their belongings. And because they need to link them to radical fundamentalist organizations to connect them to a crime, they basically were trying to get their superiors to agree with the nature of the warrant. And basically there was this huge disconnect between the radical fundamentalist unit and his superiors, with Harry Samit and the officers arresting Zacharias Moussaoui. And so, you know, when the intelligence came in that, yeah, Moussaoui was with a radical fundamentalist by the name of, I forgot his name, Mustafa something, Abu Hamza, that's his name. Sorry about that. Yeah, Abu Hamza. They basically were now debating about the wording of the warrant. And by the way, the warrant wasn't agreed upon. And September 11th happens. And guess what? They, you know, looked through his belongings anyway. Well, it's much too late. So you also have this disconnect between field officers and superiors measure. That's not the case all over the city, but I mean, you know, I could bring up other examples of where the FBI superiors basically weren't acquiescing to the field officers all the time.
Would the agent who handed Moussaoui go next, and then we'll wind up with headquarters?
Ma'am, I would reiterate a lot of the things that he said. Technology certainly, I think, is something that we have languished well behind the business community. It was mentioned that no business in America would operate with a system like we have. I would argue that very few private citizens in America would be satisfied with the system that we're operating with. Technology clearly is a high priority on my list. The resources, to include the analytical resources, be it training of those analysts and the recruitment and retention of personnel at really all ranks of the FBI. That would probably be my second point. And finally is the training issue itself. We have a tremendous number of agents who are very, very capable in the disciplines that they're already trained in. However, a lot of them since September 11th, 2001 have now been transferred to an arena that they have never been exposed to before, or the initial training that they had fell short of things that were occurring, or the world as it was prior to September 11th, 2001, or really no real sensitivity to the issues that are related to counterterrorism. So additional in-service training and training of the agents who have been reassigned, in addition to the agents who are already assigned to this type of mission, really needs to be a priority.
Here's a problem, another problem the FBI was facing in the mid-90s. All right, you have a bigger problem that was given more priority than, say, Arab fundamentalism. And that's La Cosa Nostra, or white-collar crime. You had the pump and dump stocks in the mid-90s that the La Cosa Nostra took advantage of. You had the organized crime of La Cosa Nostra and the Colombians and Ecuadorians and the Russians that were dealing with drugs like ecstasy, heroin. And so this was given more priority, higher priority in terms of funding for those certain FBI investigators than, say, Arab fundamentalists. But that was, by the mid-90s, people were starting to know who Osama bin Laden was. And after 1998, I mean, my goodness, the money should have came in to, hire more people regarding regarding the problems of Arab fundamentals in those specific cities, like Arizona, states like Arizona, New York, for example, which had the best unit in the country regarding Arab fundamentalism. But Arizona definitely should have been one of those states. Oklahoma is another. I mean, here we have a history of radical fundamentalists that were visiting these states well before 9/11 even happened. And so why wasn't the supervisors of these field offices going before the Senate Appropriations Committee and asking for more money regarding the burgeoning problem of Osama bin Laden, Al Qaeda, and Arab fundamentalism in the mid 1990s? Nothing. Basically, what Arizona did was with Ken Williams, in the middle of his investigation with Zachary Subra, he was told to go investigate an arsonist. And by the time he got back, it was much too late. I think it was the year 2000. I mean, you had all of 98, 99 that was taken away from him. So there's like this disconnect when it comes to the field officers of the FBI and then certain supervisors of these specific field offices. And you know what? In 1997, 98, the FBI should have had more in the way of feasibility in regarding to concentrating on the problem of radical fundamentalism, especially in those specific states I outlined: Arizona, Oklahoma, Detroit, New York, New Jersey. But some of those states didn't even bother.
My time's almost up, but they'll let you finish.
From a headquarters standpoint, I'm going to go back to my two main themes in terms of what I see as systemic problems, and clearly they've been hit on. The technology, number one, the FBI is a member of the intelligence community. We have to be able to communicate with them. We have to be able to have databases that can be integrated with them, and right now we do not. It's a major problem. It's a major problem for our analysts. Number two, analytical resources at headquarters. You've heard this throughout today's testimony. From a tactical standpoint, we have outstanding tactical analysts that do a phenomenal job day in and day out. Unfortunately, from a strategic analytical standpoint, the resources are woefully inadequate. Finally, from a real operational standpoint, I think we need to have a hard look at foreign students in our universities, and I can't get into more than that in this setting, but I think it's an issue that we need to address in a closed session.
Well, thank you.
Look,
my time's
let me tell you something. It's going to be real simple. Prior to 9/11, you had this really big problem within the agencies not sharing intelligence, because each agency is, dick measuring contest, for example. Each agency wants to be the primary agency that gets, closer to the president, because as you're closer to the president, that means you're given more important tasks and you're given prestige at the principals meeting, which all the leading members of the intelligence and military go and have a monthly intelligence briefing with the president or the president's White House staff. But I mean, if one agency is not sharing enough with another agency, as what we saw with 9/11, which was the biggest problem pre-9/11 intelligence, which is, a huge glaring anomaly that's hardly ever talked about. This is the reason why 9/11 was allowed to happen, is because you have agencies like the CIA and the NSA not sharing intelligence within one another, but then again, not sharing intelligence with the FBI. And I'll always go back to Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi when they were coming from that Malaysia summit meeting. The CIA knew it, the NSA knew it, and when they got to the country, it's now an FBI matter because they're in the country. And these guys are known al-Qaeda operatives. But the CIA and NSA withheld that information intentionally. With the CIA, that was the case. I mean, you could see all the previous videos I've done about the CIA and the Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. I even dedicated a podcast to it. And if you want a smoking gun of like conspiracy, well, there it is. And we can point to certain individuals like George Tenet, the DCI, Tom Wilshire, the deputy chief of the Bin Laden issue station, who withheld that information from the FBI about two al-Qaeda operatives inside the United States. This is not it's not something I just made up. This is actually recorded information. It's public information. It's out there. So if you don't have the cooperation of the whole intelligence unit because they are withholding information for some reason, to flip them or maybe to allow the attacks to happen, well, these are the questions we got to ask. And we had, I've interviewed some FBI whistleblowers. Marco Orsini is for one, Ken Williams is another, Colleen Rowley. I mean, they're out there, for God's sakes. They tried to warn their superiors about the problem, and they were ignored, or they weren't given any validity to their inquiry. And also, too, it's a problem of financing. And like Ken Williams said, you have 330 million people in the country. Well, at the time, 300 million people. And you have a very limited amount of resources in certain states that don't consider Arab fundamentalism a problem at that time. And after 9/11, what happened? All these agencies got a blank check. But by then, it's too late. So, there's a lot of conflicting problems pre-9/11. And I will always say that pre-9/11 intelligence is where the smoking gun really relies on, because at least we have some names to point to regarding the withholding information with certain agencies. And the FBI was a victim of it.